Maybe I should blow it. Oh, look.
Mrs. Paine, how did you first become acquainted with the Oswalds?
I met them through friends at a party last winter, and then saw more of Marina later. I was interested in talking with her because I was trying to learn the language. Then later they had financial difficulties when he lost his work, and eventually led to my inviting her to live with me in Dallas while she was waiting for her baby that was born in October, and to stay on a couple of months with me, just as one woman with another can help when babies are small. And then I think they expected to get an apartment together when they could afford it, say after Christmas sometime.
Mr. Paine, you've had occasion to engage in conversation with Lee Oswald at a few times. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, when I first heard of Lee, I was sort of looked forward with eagerness to an opportunity to talk with someone with whom I didn't believe I would agree, but at least it was interesting to talk to a man who had been to Russia and apparently had his own opinions. I tried about 4 times, perhaps 3 or 4 times, to talk in a serious manner with him. Eventually I gave up, for the reason that I thought he was not influenced by logic, or didn't let the present reality influence his rather dogmatic way of thinking. And it was therefore useless to talk with him.
Here we go.
What the hell was that all about, Hunley?
I don't know. These people.
2 lion sacks of crap.
I'm going to start out strong here. Look at this. Sharon
on
down.
the board. Hey, young fellas.
Yeah, no kidding. Before it even started, I mean, we're talking, she's on the jump. Thank you so much.
Way to go, Sharon.
Okay, so let me see. So she invited her over so it could be 2 ladies together as they are, as they are. How's that work? And
it doesn't really work as Dove knows. As Dove knows, it doesn't really work that way. She said she wanted Ruth Paine, of course, living in Irving, Texas, wanted Marina to come over to teach her Russian.
Really? Well, I mean, everybody has to learn Russian.
Unfortunately for the story, she taught the language of Russian at a school in Dallas and was an instructor in Russian. So the idea that she had to learn Russian right out of that video is preposterous.
Yeah, I know. A good point, because people probably were more actually qualified back then. Nowadays, it might be realistic that the Russian teacher needed to learn Russian. But
Right.
Back then, they probably did know.
Right. Well, the other sidebar lie is that Lee only spoke Russian with Marina, and that was torturous for Marina, according to Ruth Paine. So when she came over, Ruth Paine, to help her, spoke nothing but Russian. You know what I mean? Like, one of the arguments that Ruth Paine said was that Lee never let her learn or speak English. So I thought, okay, well, you'll come over to the house and learn how to speak English. But Ruth Paine never spoke anything but Russian to her.
Oh, didn't she speak the language of love? Oh, sorry.
Well, we'll get into that a little later. But the just the background on Ruth Paine I wanted to get into is because a lot of people have no idea who Ruth Paine is or what the deal is with her. She was a Quaker back east, family raised in Ohio. Her father, every single person in her family, Hunley, is a spook. Her sister, Sylvia, was actually in the D.C. directory working at the CIA as a psychologist in 1963. The father, I think his father was William Avery Hyde, as Ruth Hyde there's a young Ruth, probably about 29 there. The father, William Avery Hyde, was OSS and then later Agency for International Development, going down to Central and South America. I'm as part of the CIA. And then her sister's husband was also AID, and a thing called the International Cooperative Alliance, which was another CIA front that featured a guy who's going to be a future episode named George de Mohrenschildt from Poland. And de Mohrenschildt and his wife are going to be important. There's George. He was Oswald's handler along with his wife up until the time he turns them over, the Oswalds, to Ruth Paine and Michael Paine, because George de Mohrenschildt has to go to Haiti to oversee a political event in Haiti and deal with George Bush's phony oil company in Haiti,
Smedley Butler.
Yeah,
it's so fun.
Everything's about Haiti. I got to tell you, all roads lead to Haiti. But that's going to be in the George de Mohrenschildt episode, so I don't want to get into George here. George has an incredibly complicated background, eventually blows his head off when he's subpoenaed by the House Assassinations Committee. Yeah, he gets a subpoena and he's down in Palm Beach. And rather than testify, the week before, he had written a letter to President George Herbert Walker Bush, "Can you get me out of this?" And Walker Bush wrote back, "Sorry, my old friend, there's nothing I can do." And then he took the shotgun, put his foot on the trigger, and blew his head off.
This is the former head of the CIA, or future head of the CIA, George H.W. Bush, that one?
Yeah, the former head of the CIA at that point. He's already president.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he blows his head off. And oh, no, I'm sorry. He's about to become CIA head. Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. Sorry. He will become president. This was in 77. So I think that's when de Mohrenschildt runs out of gas. But at this party in Dallas, he turns the Oswalds over to Ruth and Michael Paine and moves on to the next assignment. He actually George de Mohrenschildt goes to numerous documentation of him going to the CIA in Dallas and talking to them and getting his assignment and stuff like that. He used to actually want to be a filmmaker, de Mohrenschildt, and he used that as his spy cover, making video films wherever he went. And he actually wrote movie reviews for Variety magazine, which I found to be hysterically funny. But that's George de Mohrenschildt. When he turns him over to Ruth Paine and Michael Paine, that's the next level. That's where we start to get into the plot of the assassination. They become the handlers of. You could look at it one way, you could look at it the other way. I happen to believe that each one was a handler of the other. Like Marina Oswald needed handling too, because she was a KGB agent. People forget this. She was being handled, I believe, by Ruth Paine, and Michael Paine was assigned to Lee Harvey Oswald. And it makes sense because these are two spooks. Both of them, the husband and wife. I mean, Marina, despite having a child, they both have these. Well, she's going to have a second kid, and then Ruth Paine has the two kids, and they are both, professional intelligence operatives. All four of them. They go on a picnic together. Yeah, that's Marina with her daughter, and she's about 21 there, 22. Highly sexualized woman, had been involved in a sex scandal in St. Petersburg, Russia, with an ambassador, and had to leave St. Petersburg. Was likely an assignment she was involved in, and gets transferred to Minsk in the old Soviet Union. She was involved in some honey trap.
Coming soon.
Honey trap.
Told stories.
Right. She was part of a honey trap. And then obviously Oswald is part of a honey trap because he gets sucked in. There she is. She looks fairly good there. I mean, this is the two kids. And that's who Ruth Paine wants to move into her house. Within 3 weeks, my friend, she's already writing love letters to Marina, asking her to move in with her.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because they're not really, they are love letters. I have them. There's Ruth right there. She writes these letters nonstop to Marina to have her move in, and then suspiciously her husband moves out. Michael Paine moves out, so she's all alone with the two kids. After the assassination, Michael Paine will move back in. They'll get divorced about 8 years later, but she was saying they were getting divorced, and that Marina was having problems with Lee. And there's all this discussion about how to handle this to get her into the house. What they want to do is separate the two of them. But what they're both playing each other, by the way. Marina is playing Ruth Paine, and Ruth Paine is playing Marina, in my humble opinion. And the sexual stuff is just part of the game. The lesbian angle to this thing. These two right here, yeah. I think they're both playing each other as intelligence operatives. One trying to get information out of the other, and vice versa.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where Hosty shows up. See, Hosty shows up. FBI agent James Hosty shows up because Marina is living with Ruth Paine, and he finds this to be a little odd. The FBI and Ruth Paine, interestingly enough, and Michael Paine are completely unhappy with the FBI because they're CIA, and while they can't publicly say it, they are constantly at odds with the FBI. And throughout and after and before, and the Secret Service, who are not their friends. In fact, after the assassination, we'll get into it, the Secret Service separates Marina from Ruth Paine and tells her not to be in a relationship with her as a friend or whatever the relationship was, because she's CIA. The Secret Service actually tells this to Marina Oswald. So we know that to be part of the narrative now.
Well, we've known the agencies have not gotten along for a long time.
Right. Yeah. But you can see it in real time with what's going on here, with Hosty showing up and then Oswald going to FBI headquarters, writing the note, stay away from my wife. And then Hosty's told to burn the note after the assassination. So there's interaction going on, especially at CIA headquarters in Dallas, where de Mohrenschildt is getting his orders about what's going to happen in Haiti, and handing off this assignment to Ruth Paine.
Sweet. And while we're drinking, we got some super chats in. Tahoe Realm, thank you very much.
Love the diner episode. Oh, a diner, coffee shop, you mean? Yeah.
And Simon Gruber, Duran Watcher, which leads to Robert Barnes, which got him to us. Is that cool?
We hear one LBJ. Come on, Bobby.
Go ahead.
What? Come on, Bobby. You know better than that.
Thank you, C. Neil.
Wow,
yeah, Fridays are fun, man.
That patch look. Wow.
Hell yeah.
Pirate thing going. We're gonna have some fun today, because what we're gonna do is, this is the third or fourth, JFK thing. We're gonna get into, like I promised, despite the amount of time it takes. We're gonna do each individual character and have them all up on the channel eventually, and that means General Walker, and that means George de Mohrenschildt, and that we're going to go down the line eventually, working backwards to get to the big enchilada, which will be Oswald and that group, the main players. But I'm kind of working it backwards, because then my theory is that when I do Oswald and we do the main people, when I refer to these other characters, people will already know them.
A little foundation on each.
Yeah. It seems to make some storytelling sense to me. You may not know how Ruth Paine completely fits in at this point, but the fact of the matter is there are going to be a lot of dots here today that'll be connected later on. So for instance, Ruth Paine, as some people know, was the one who got Oswald a job at the Texas School Book Depository, calling up Truly and getting him a job. She was teaching Oswald how to drive a car. She was helping Oswald get his license. At the same time, she's trying to separate. She drives Marina and all the way to New Orleans. He goes back to New Orleans, Oswald, and they get an apartment in New Orleans, and she picks her up and takes her back under the auspices that she's pregnant and that she'll pay for everything. If you read some of the letters, the love letters that
we'll have to put some of that up on Locals.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I was rereading them last night, and they're not salacious, but it's just one after another. I miss you. I want you to come back. You could live with me. I'll take care of everything. And indeed she did. And indeed she could, because right here you see them. That's Marguerite Oswald, Lee's mother, on the left, with the new baby from Marina. That's Marina on the right. And in the background, you see Ruth Paine. And you notice how they're starting to dress alike, almost like they're a couple, wearing the same blouses and the same dresses. And I believe that's Chris Paine on the bottom, who will later direct the film Whatever Happened to the Electric Car.
Oh my.
Yeah, so this is another spooky kind of film documentary.
We did cover that.
Who Killed the Electric Car? I think it was Who Killed the. It was ahead of its time. I'll tell you that much.
We covered it in CIA in Hollywood on the channel.
That's right. That is true.
So
anyway, so this house in Irving here, they move into this house, and Oswald comes on the weekends. Wesley Buell Frazier kind of lives next door, and Frazier will be the guy who drives Oswald to the Texas School Book Depository, and he's taking Oswald to this house on the weekends. After they come back from New Orleans, all of Oswald's stuff is in the garage, Ruth Paine's garage, because Oswald is living in a rooming house. Yeah, there's the garage. There's a side door in the back there that goes into the garage from the house itself. And when it's kind of interesting. After the I'm jumping around here, but I think you'll follow it. After the assassination, like an hour or two afterwards, Ruth Paine said she was shocked when the police showed up, the Dallas PD, to her house, and she was speechless. So in the Warren Commission report of the cops that actually did show up, in their testimony, they said she opened the door and said, "Welcome, I've been waiting for you. What took you so long?" And completely contradicting her Warren Commission testimony that she was shocked that the Dallas police showed up. And she goes, come on in, let's go in the garage. They said, we don't have a search warrant. She goes, who needs a search warrant? Come on in, there's his crap, get in there. So they went, oh, that's interesting, very nice, lady. So they go in and they look around, and look how harsh she is, bro. Oh,
no, not devious at all.
No, she looks like a Quaker. That's one spiritual Quaker right there with her butch operation going on.
Yeah, it's like, are you going to take that board against somebody, or are you actually just...
This is one tough girl. Anyway, so she lets him in. She says, they ask Marina Oswald. Now, keep in mind, she's translating for Marina Oswald. The Dallas police are listening. They later brought in their own translator because they didn't trust Ruth Paine. But at that moment when they showed up, Ruth Paine is translating for Marina. So the FBI, the Dallas police, coffin maker. Yeah, thanks, Ray. The Dallas police asked Marina if her husband had a rifle. So she says no. And then Ruth Paine says, stop lying. He had a rifle and it's in there. So they all go into the garage, and she points to the blanket that supposedly held the rifle. And the cop picks it up and it goes limp. And everybody goes, oh, missing rifle. Oh my. So the cop takes the blanket. He takes them and the kids. Everybody goes in the squad car, and they got to go downtown, to police headquarters, which they do. They take them all, and then Michael Paine shows up. But one of the side notes of the search and seizure is what they got. And in there, according to Walters, the Dallas PD guy, in a separate book, he said there were 6 or 7 filing cabinets filled with hundreds and hundreds of index cards of Castro sympathizers in Dallas. And that
in this garage, seized by Dallas police,
later taken off the FBI inventory. You will learn here, Hunley. You will learn the truth.
Someday.
They took the file cabinets, and in the file cabinets was the actual work of Ruth and Michael Paine, which was to find and catalog pro-Castro sympathizers, students and others, communists, in the Dallas area. And that's what Michael Paine was doing at SMU. And Michael Paine, as we got into before, worked for Bell Helicopter, and he had a strange boss. Michael Paine at Bell was an engineer with a security clearance, top security clearance, Michael Paine, just a regular guy. And what did his boss look like, Eric? Do you remember who his boss was?
That was
He was a guy.
Dornberger?
Yeah. If you could see, this is who he reported to at Bell. Hey, how's it going? Zig Heil. So Dornberger came over with von Braun. Von Braun goes to Houston and sets up NASA. And Dornberger, part of von Braun's V2 rocket program, comes over in Operation Paperclip and sets up something called Bell Helicopter, where Michael Paine works with a security clearance. Now, Michael Paine...
Didn't Dornberger have a former boss?
What do you mean? He had Himmler, who he loved. This guy, because a lot of people spin it like, hey, they were scientists. Go fuck yourselves. They killed so many Jewish children because the Jewish children had small hands and they were able to go inside the vestibule where the rocket held to clean it. So they needed the Jewish children in the cave where they had the V2 and V1 rocket program that Dornberger and von Braun run.
Thank you, Jay.
And they killed tens of thousands of Jewish kids just in the cleaning of their rockets. And they reported to this guy, the chicken farmer, Himmler, right, who they revered. Anyway, so Dornberger is Michael Paine's boss, as things will have it. And he's got to go to work at Bell Helicopter, the security clearance. Now, here they come. This is them coming out of the Warren Commission in 1964 after their testimony. Look at her. And these are two freaky, spooky cats, right? Look at her, look at him. His testimony, the Warren Commission, was so bizarre intentionally. He just rambled on and just meandering around. Dulles is sitting there, their former boss on the commission. So I don't think they were in any particular trouble. They were just trying to ramble on and try to assign blame to Oswald.
He knew Dulles somehow, though, right?
Michael Paine's aunt was Mary Bancroft, I believe, who was Alan Dulles' mistress during World War II when he was in OSS. So, yeah, but the real connection for Michael Paine is the Cabot line. He has three lines of his family. One is Robert Paine, one of the founding fathers of the United States of America, who signed the Declaration of Independence out of Massachusetts. He was one of the first governors of Massachusetts, Robert Paine. Robert Treat Paine, so he's not confused with Thomas Paine. And the other line of his family is the Forbes. His mother was Ruth Forbes. So that kid you saw, that little baby that you saw, that Michael Paine's son, Chris Paine, he inherited $1.75 million when he turned 18, that little stinker, right?
So then he didn't have to worry about that movie succeeding all that much. Right.
He kind of disappeared. He lives across the street from me, by the way. I just so
bring him by.
he lives in Los Feliz. So I don't know. Maybe I'll run into him. I think he's about 5 or 6 years younger than me. Maybe I'll see him at Albertsons later in the day in the dairy department. But anyway, so Michael Paine has a Cabot, the Forbes, the Brahmin line, and a second cousin named John Kerry. You can't make this up. It is what it is. You want to connect dots. Here's some dots. Knock yourselves out all weekend. You got John Kerry, you got the Cabot. The Cabot line is interesting because Cabot is United Fruit. And that's what these guys are doing in Central America. That's what they're doing in South America. That's why AID, Agency for International Development, is filled with spooks. And those spooks are Ruth Paine's father. Ruth Paine's sister is a psychologist who obviously, like I said, works at Langley as a psychologist. But there's another flattering feminine photo of mom with her. I think she's like 6 feet tall, by the way. And that's her. Yeah, so that's Chris, obviously. But there is the 1955 blue Bel Air Chevy station wagon that will play a part in the story. That car will go across the country to New Orleans. Somebody actually found the car. I sent you a little video of it a couple of days ago. They found the car still around, and there it is. There is the actual Ruth Paine conspiracy mobile. That take a look at that.
It's a little rough. Could use some restoration, but
but
That would probably be
nevertheless,
pretty valuable if they did restore it to an original
right? I know,
condition.
I know. I think that's what this video is about. Texas classic cars. It says on the bottom there, but that's the actual Ruth Paine car. Michael Paine, of course, drove us. There is the Texas. Excuse me, that was a Mexican tourist sticker, I think. Yeah, or Texas. Hold on.
Texas. It's a
Yeah,
Texas department.
1978. Yeah. So there's also, just a side to digress a little bit, there was a cat named Roger Craig. He was a deputy sheriff. Some of you guys may know who he was in the folklore of the assassination. Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig was the one who claimed to see Oswald leaving the Texas School Book Depository and getting into a tan Rambler station wagon. And when he went to police headquarters, when he was in the office with Captain Fritz, he said this, and apparently that's when Oswald said, "That's Ruth Paine's car. Leave her out of this. She has nothing to do with this." That was the statement by Oswald. But Roger Craig, to his death, and he was hounded to his death by Dallas police. He never buckled from the story ever. And he was deputy sheriff of the year before. He was cop of the year, and he was brutally honest. He eventually resigned from the Dallas PD, saying it was too corrupt for him to work there. Sheriff's office, rather. He was a deputy sheriff. And he never varied his statement that Oswald got into that Rambler and got picked up. Now, I don't know if this was the Rambler or not, but this is the other car that many people felt was Ruth Paine's 1959 Rambler cross-country vehicle. They did have 3 cars, as a matter of fact. Michael Paine drove of course, in the middle of Texas, a French Citroën, because that fits in.
Yeah.
Right.
And Russian, too. Speaking Russian.
Right.
French
and then they
Citroën.
bought another Oldsmobile, a blue and white old sedan. I think it was, I want to say a 54 or 56 old sedan. So Oswald could learn how to drive on it, because that's what people do. You know, that's the Bel Air, I think, right there. That's the house with the Chevy Bel Air. That car. Yeah, it's the 55. But the Rambler had a roof rack, and this didn't have a roof rack. I've always had my doubts about the Rambler and the Bel Air thing, because he's emphatic. And Craig is not the only witness to this Rambler. There's 3 other witnesses who saw the Rambler pull up and people get in and speed off underneath the trestle.
And this is the house, more modern shot, I'm guessing? Or
All right, let me tell you something that I found out that nobody knows. A guy shows up. The police show up, Irving police, and they guard the house, right? This is that night and into the next day, and the next day they guard the house. There's cops inside the house, right? So Marina's in the bedroom with her kids in that back bedroom. And then Ruth Paine is on the phone talking to people. Michael Paine's not around. Ruth Paine's on the phone. Her kids are gone. Nobody knows what happened to her kids. She got rid of her kids the day before, as if something big was going to happen November 22nd. She kind of disappears for a couple hours. Yeah. So her kids are gone. And she's on the phone, according to the 2 cops, talking to whoever, just keeps making phone calls, and they're in Russian. So she knows nobody who could talk to her in Russian, but she's on the phone yapping away in Russian to various people, which is weird. Okay. So the cops, in the middle of the night, they see a guy in the living room in a trench coat and a hat tiptoeing towards Marina's bedroom, and they spring into action and tackle this guy with guns out, and Ruth Paine, comes running out of the bedroom yelling, "He's a reporter, get off of him." And It's a guy from Life magazine, I swear to God, and he had given, at the back door of this house in the backyard, he had given a briefcase of money to Ruth Paine to buy access to get into Marina to get an exclusive interview from Life magazine. These guys tackle the guy. She comes running out, screaming at the top of her lungs, "He's a reporter, he's a reporter." And the 2 cops, who are freaking out, say, "No one's allowed in this house." And she says, yelling, "It's my effing house. I'll let in anybody I want." Now, they had installed a hotline phone that day from District Attorney Wade with a right into the house, a direct line. So they call up Wade, who gets on the phone with her, because these 2 cops are overwhelmed. They don't know what to make of this woman screaming, "This is my house, get out," you know, and they're there to prevent something like this happening. The Life magazine guy. Anyway, she peels off. Apparently, she peeled off out of whatever amount of money, nobody knows, was given to Ruth Paine by Life magazine. She peels off $350 and gives it to Marina Oswald. Now, 350 times 7, you could do the math, how much that's worth, right, Eric?
Yeah.
You know, it's about $2,000.
Sure.
Right. So she gives her $2,000 out of the pile of money, and nobody ever knew how much money she got. Now, here's the weird thing. She doesn't really need the money because she's married to Michael Paine, who has millions of dollars in his trust fund, right? But yet, the same year in the assassination, late 1963, early 1965, she buys in that neighborhood 3 upper middle class homes in cash on plots number 3, 4, and 5. Huge,
sounds like safe houses.
Right. I don't know. Michael Paine's not on the lease. He's got nothing to do with the finances. They're in her name, which is highly unusual for a married woman in Dallas in 1963. She buys 3 of these homes in the back there. This is more of what's considered in that neighborhood, more of a working class or lower middle class home.
Yeah, it's a starter home.
A starter home. Right. But she buys 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 in 1964. In 1964, and pays cash for these 3 homes in that same neighborhood.
That's crazy. And hey, thank you, Jamie Barros or Barros.
Jamie, thanks. Way to go, man. This guy's a good guy.
Hell yeah.
He's been on us since the beginning.
Oh yeah.
So this home later becomes a museum, and who cares, you know, what became of it. But the real thing is, she took that money and made money off of this assassination, and she then eventually, Michael Paine moves back into the house, and they live as husband and wife for another 7 or 8, 9 years. They get divorced in the early 70s, you know, and then she eventually goes to, you know, Central America. It's kind of interesting because she ends up in the 80s. This is at the end of the story. I just want to jump ahead a little bit. And she ends up being involved with the Contras. She's sent down to a CIA base in eastern Nicaragua, which is Contra territory. And the people who are backing the Sandinistas are communists from New York, leftist, liberal types, college kids who are coming down to Nicaragua at the time to back, what was the guy's name? Danny Ortega, Sandinista? Right. Okay. So she's doing the same thing. She's taking names and she's writing down who the communist sympathizers are in Nicaragua. So a friend takes her to another camp in Costa Rica, and she gets out of the car, and she's supposedly running a sawmill, a Quaker sawmill. That's why I thought that photo was so interesting of her with the board. Because
it does look like she's
yeah. There's the Quaker sawmill. I don't think this is in Costa Rica or Nicaragua, but obviously she's trying to get her act together.
But she's not a spot. She's not CIA. No way.
No. Anyway, the reason I mention this is because this woman gets out with her, and there's a group of leftists, you know, New York kind of leftists. Mm-hmm. And they said, "That's Ruth Paine." And she says, "Yeah." She goes, "She's CIA. You can't let her out." And she says, "Okay." And they escort her out. Ruth Paine, this is in the 80s, having nothing to do with the Kennedy assassination. They all knew she was CIA in the 80s in Nicaragua and kicked her out of their camp. So it wasn't just conspiracy buffs of the Kennedy assassination who thought this woman was a spook. I mean, the sister's a spook, the father's a spook, she's a spook. But it's funny because
husband's a spook.
But you don't get one assignment. You got to keep working, Eric, to get to where you're living today in Santa Rosa, California at the age of 90, where she lives today, right? And she's done so many documentaries that she's almost like a performance artist. She's like the Karen Finley of Kennedy documentaries. You know, she's done so many of them, you know, CBS, Any Anniversary. She is so well schooled at pulling this off. Not as good as her husband, because the 30th anniversary, CBS News did a 30th anniversary retrospective, and they brought on Michael Paine. She was on Frontline, PBS, the state-controlled Soviet TASS Frontline that did a two-part documentary, Who Was Lee Harvey Oswald, which was so state-run it would turn your hair curled. And it very difficult to watch. There's so much disinformation in the Frontline Lee Harvey Oswald two-parter that it's hard to watch. But nevertheless, the 30th anniversary, Michael Paine is interviewed. Now, Michael Paine comes to the police station where Ruth Paine and the kids are, where Oswald is. They bring everybody downtown. Remember I said they took them all from the house and they took them? Right. So Michael Paine shows up after he calls Ruth Paine on the phone from Bell Helicopter. And how do we know it's Bell Helicopter? Because they had a wiretap, the FBI on his phone and Ruth Paine's phone, Dornberger. He knew what he was doing. So there was a wiretap on there, and the FBI heard the wiretap. And he calls up his wife, Ruth Paine, and he says, you know who's responsible for this, and it's not Oswald.
Oh, God. Somebody's throwing a dot at us.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. No shit. That was over 20 years ago. Hilaria Bolden lived up the street on Bethany.
Of course she did.
Plot twist.
All
Okay.
right, back to the story.
Back to the story. So the wiretap has Michael Paine saying that Oswald's not responsible for this, and they know who is. Now, that's kind of like, I'd be interested in that if I was the police. So Michael Paine is at police headquarters, and who's in the next room, the interrogation room? Lee Harvey Oswald. So they say to him, you want to talk to him? And he goes, what? They go, yeah, go ahead. You can talk to him. And everybody's going like, he's saying, why do they want me to talk to Oswald? Right? Like, here, nobody could get at Oswald, but they're offering Michael Paine a chance to talk to Oswald. And they're thinking that Oswald's going to say something, and obviously the room would be wired, Eric, right?
Sure.
And Michael Paine drops the ball because he was supposed to go in there and he was supposed to get Oswald to tell him, I did this for fame. I did this for, you know what I mean? And I did this to make a name for myself or whatever. So he says, nah, not interested in talking to him. So they ask him like 10 freaking times. Do you want to talk to Oswald? And he's going, no. Come on. You want to talk to Oswald? And he goes, no. Because he had met with Oswald numerous times. He had gone to ACLU meetings with Oswald. He had gone to John Birch Society meetings with Oswald. He had gone to student assemblies at SMU with Oswald. He had like 10 different meetings with Oswald talking politics. Michael Paine's father, just so you know, Lyman Paine was an architect in Boston and turned into a Trotskyite. Okay? Michael Paine was a Trotskyite. Now, when I say Trotskyite today, what that really means, to define it for the audience at home, Stalin was not a Trotskyite, and Che Guevara was. And what they wanted was global, one world, global
New World Order.
Globalism. They were the original globalists. They wanted revolution around the world simultaneously. And Stalin says, look, I got one country, I could barely handle it. And Trotsky was talking about global revolution, changing the different governments to have a one world society, kind of like somebody named Klaus Schwab, right? So these guys, Trotskyite father, Trotskyite son, Michael Paine, were globalists. And they wanted Michael Paine to talk to Oswald and record whatever Oswald said to Michael Paine in a wired room. Now, how do we know this? We know this because 30 years later on CBS, on the special, the retrospective in 1993, Michael Paine, despite having asked by the Warren Commission in 1964 repeatedly, did you speak to Lee Harvey Oswald? They asked him 5 times. The Warren Commission does, to make sure he didn't speak to him. He says, no, I never spoke to him. And the guy says, really? You didn't speak to him? He goes, no. He goes, come on. So it must have been important because he just keep asking him. So he says, no, I didn't speak to him, which is true. He did not speak to him in that Dallas.
He was supposed to. It's like, wait, why aren't you giving me the answer I want?
So cut to 1993, CBS News. What does he say in the interview? I spoke to Lee Harvey Oswald, and they said, what did he tell you? He says, I did it to make a name for myself. I did it to be famous. And there it is, my friend. 30 years later, the guy finally figures out what his job is and lies on camera in 1993 for CBS News. complete bold-faced lie because he never met with Oswald. But that's what he was supposed to do in 1963, on November 23rd, when he went into that police station. And
so he's a little slow on the uptake.
He got scared. I think he got scared.
I was going to say, or slow on the uptake. Thanks, Greg.
Well, let me tell you something. They found something in Oswald. First, a couple of things they found in Oswald's collection of stuff, because they got all his stuff out of the garage. One of the things they found was Oswald's collection of amphetamines. He was addicted to amphetamines, and that's why he was smacking Marina around. He got revved up on amphetamines. A lot of them were doing it back then.
Dexedrine or whatever?
Yeah, on Dex. Yeah, he was on Dexies. And it wasn't for weight or anything. It was just, to do your work, to focus. And he had worked at Jagger Childs. His previous job was, I don't know if people know this, but his previous job in Dallas was to work at a place called Jagger Childs that did photographic aerial reconnaissance maps of Cuba. And he was in there doing, and then this is during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He's in there working in a security place called Jagger Childs, where they did for the government, mapped out U-2 spy plane photographs of Cuba and whatever else they wanted to take. And that eventually those photos lead to Kennedy seeing the missiles of October. That's where it came from. So not only did Oswald work in Atsugi at the air base in Japan, where the U-2 spy plane was, as a radar operator, knowing the elevation of the U-2 spy plane, which was our biggest kept secret, knowing the elevation of this, as you're well aware, the U-2 spy plane allowed the Soviets to shoot down and then take Gary Powers hostage and put him on trial. That's what the importance was of the height and flight height of the U-2 spy plane. Whether Oswald gave that up or not, we don't know. But that was the rumor, that Oswald was giving that up to the Soviets to allow him to become a double agent and move into Minsk as a cover. He had to give him something. That's a
hell of a something.
Yeah, well, not if you're on the side of war, because that eliminated the JFK Khrushchev peace conference, Eric, which is Curtis LeMay and other elements of the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to happen. So Oswald may have intentionally given up the aerial height of the U-2 spy plane so the Soviets could shoot it down, thereby making a fool out of Eisenhower in 1959 and 1958, and canceling the peace talks that Eisenhower was supposed to have before Kennedy even gets in there. So Gary Powers gets trotted out and he's put on trial, like a show trial in Moscow, which we all saw on TV. The documentary of Powers being on trial. And they tricked Eisenhower into saying there were no flights over Russia. And then Khrushchev said, how do you explain this guy? So he was kind of trapped in that position. Not that Putin hasn't learned by this, because he now has, from what I'm understanding, French special forces that he's captured, and Macron has been calling up day and night to get them released, and he's about to trot out some French special forces that they captured in Mariupol, according to the Duran. So it's a very similar situation, which is why this story is relevant, because there's a lot of echoes of today, because government techniques do not change. The culture of our intelligence hasn't changed, and the culture of their intelligence hasn't changed. They still do the same things, and we do the same things for the most part. So
yeah, Jamie brings up a good point on that. And you have Elon Musk that's throwing a wrench into a lot of it too.
Can't lose it to it. Yeah, no, that's definitely true, Jamie. That's definitely true. So with this particular story, you have Oswald now working at Giles Jaggers, and he quits that job or leaves that job, and he goes back to New Orleans, and the CIA claims that he goes to Mexico City. I don't think he did, and many of us don't believe he did. We believe that was to set him up to get a visa to go to Cuba after the assassination, after he was framed, and then launch a military invasion of the island of Cuba, once and for all, taking down Castro. I think that was the motivation of him supposedly going to the Soviet embassy and calling up about a visa, because as we know, those tapes were sent to J. Edgar Hoover, who told LBJ in the transcripts of November 22nd that the man they have on these tapes is not Oswald, and the photo that they have outside the Soviet embassy in Mexico City is not Oswald. And we know that because it's documented, Hoover talking to a man named Lyndon Baines Johnson. So that ship is left, right? But what happens is Oswald comes back, and he wants to meet with John Connolly to get his military. What's it called when you're released from the military? Your
discharge.
Discharge. He wants to get that up to honorable. He wants to upgrade that to honorable. And he comes back to Austin, and he is in Texas. He's not in Mexico City. There's documentation of him going to the unemployment office. He's trying to transfer his unemployment from New Orleans to Dallas. There's documentation of that. There's documentation of him at the DMV, and there's documentation of him trying to see John Connolly. He was part of a dangle. Yeah, there was 13 of them. It was an Angleton program. They were dropped in, not so much as a dangle, but human intelligence. The dangle is not really part of it. There were 13 American defectors. I think about 9 of them were ex-military who were put behind the Iron Curtain with various countries. Oswald ended up with the Soviet Union. Keep an eye on Schellenberger's father was
Keeps
CIA.
coming up. Keeps coming up.
Shelley Schellenberger, CIA. It's his father. Keep an eye on this guy. This guy is a spook. I'm telling you right now. I've been saying this for years. But
Family
anyway,
of the CIA, also on the channel. Check it out.
Yeah, but I mean, they love to work in families, which is why I mentioned the Ruth Paine family lineage and the Michael Paine family lineage. They trust deep lineage into the American culture going back to the founding fathers or other family members that work for the agency in the case of Ruth Paine. If that helps anybody.
Oh, yeah. And again, we've got the CIA trilogy, which multiple people have come up and have been mentioned in that. So definitely please check it out. Low IQ Media. Thank you.
You know, he uses Donald Sutherland for the second half. I think it was, he was trying. I don't think it was his idea. I don't think they were trying to be on both sides politically. Yeah, I don't like it. I just have to grin and bear it, But the Donald Sutherland picks it up in the second half, so it gets a little better there on some of the other parts of the episodes.
And yes, you're right, Kick Jack. We have commented on that, and we've tweeted about that.
Has been on all kinds of YouTube. Well, he's running for governor on neither party ticket. He's running as a non-party line ticket. So I don't know how that's going to work for governor in November in California. So I don't think that's going to work because there's a lot of other Republican candidates, and he's going up. What's that?
It can't work. The machines are too damn small.
Right. No. This is a one-party state, and Newsom's running for re-election. Unless he spends $1 trillion like Rick Caruso is doing here in LA to run for mayor. Caruso went from Republican to Independent to Democrat to run for mayor here, and he's got a damn good shot. He's caught up with this communist Karen Bass pretty quickly, and he's passed her by about 3 points in the polls. But it's gonna end up being a runoff. It starts in May. I mean, it's coming up pretty quick.
All right. Well, you'll be out hunting Mothman, so you'll miss it.
It's kind of funny. She said she wanted to improve her Russian, but in reality, like I said, there may have been some sexual deviance involved with that. Here's a great photo. This is after a year or two after the assassination. Of course, that's Marina Oswald. She is, I think, about 24 there. She marries Kenneth Porter, who is also a CIA spook. She marries a guy, and then he sues her for divorce. He smacks her around. Let me just back up how this works, because with the honeypot, with the honey trap and the honeypot situation, what the Angleton representatives told Oswald and the other 13 defectors was, what had happened previously is these women are put on the men who are spies from here in the Eastern European countries. They would marry them and come back here to the United States, get a divorce, and then be able to operate freely as intelligence operatives for the Soviet Union. Angleton, who was in charge of espionage for the CIA, said, I'm putting an end to that. We're going to hook you up, or you're going to get hooked up with somebody in a honey trap in the Soviet Union or Bulgaria or any of the Soviet bloc countries. You're going to come back here with them, and you're not going to divorce them. That game is over. That game is over. If it doesn't work out, we'll ship them back, which is what happens to Oswald. Oswald gets, like a lot of Russian women, they're he's being baited by her. He's being baited by her. You're not a man. You're a little whatever they were doing. That was designed with the influence of amphetamines. Also, he starts smacking her around, and that's because she wants a divorce to get free of him, so she could then do espionage in the United States. And this has been the pattern. She's not making this up. This has been the pattern for a number of years now, where these women have come over here, got cut loose, and were able to operate freely in the United States. Angleton, to his credit, as crazy as Angleton was, completely insane alcoholic, realized that this had to come to an end. And he said to them, of the 13 things of the dangles that this guy was talking about, the 13 intelligence operatives, you got to understand, we didn't have satellites. We didn't have anything. The 13 that are sent behind the Iron Curtain are there to get human intelligence, Eric. When Oswald goes over to Moscow and then later Minsk, he is running around writing down how you buy stuff in a supermarket, how the phone works, how the bus line works, how the subway works. We didn't have that human intelligence. That's what Oswald did. He wrote it in his diary. He strapped it to his stomach. And when he went back to the United States, he went to a safe house in Rotterdam and gave it to 2 CIA agents, all the stuff in the diary that recorded the human intelligence that he took during that time in Minsk. He took photos with a camera, and the camera that he used was found, which is right here, which was found in the garage. This is the West German Minox spy camera that was found in, here's the little camera here, was found in Ruth Paine's garage. Now, the reason that's of interest, this is also with the meter here. This is exactly the same with the measuring meter. On this camera was footage of military installations in Minsk. That's why that camera is important. On that camera was film of military installations in Minsk, and that was part of his job. Anybody who thinks that he was not an operative is insane. I mean, this was part of what, there's so much evidence of the work that Lee Harvey Oswald did as an Office of Naval Intelligence. He's not CIA, he's ONI. He's ONI. And he goes as a Marine, he goes out of, that's why he calls Raleigh, North Carolina, Nag's Head. That's why he calls them from the Dallas police station, because in Nag's Head was an ONI base in 1963. And that's who he's calling up from the Dallas jail. Now, he calls up Ruth Paine twice. Ruth Paine answers the phone, and he says, I want you to hook me up with John Apt, the head of the American Civil Liberties Union in New York, as an attorney. That's what he asked Ruth Paine. He says, can you call Ruth Paine? He says, oh, yeah, I'm going to get on that right away. So she actually does call him or something and gets no response and doesn't call Oswald back, and says to the Warren Commission, imagine the presumption of this man claiming to be innocent and asking for an attorney. How outrageous, Ruth Paine says to the Warren Commission, presuming that he was innocent and acting as if nothing had happened. And here he is, he can't dial it himself, and he's trying to reach his wife also. So he gets Ruth Paine, of course, who answers the phone and says, I'll get right on that, calling John Apt.
When all this Oswald will be coming up for, God, 3-4 part. I mean, you have so much Oswald that it's going to take a while.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But just getting back to the camera for a second, the reason the camera is of interest is because they find another camera in the garage. And that camera, same exact one, designed in West Germany, Minox, belongs to Michael Paine. And now they've got 2 cameras. And the FBI, in the inventory list, changes the camera. People saw this because they already saw the Dallas police inventory list. The FBI takes this off the list and turns it into a light meter on the inventory list to get rid of the camera, which everybody had already seen the Dallas police inventory list.
Thank you, Tank Mosey.
Tank Mosey. So I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff here, but the Paines do not stop their career. Like I said, Ruth Paine ends up becoming a principal of a Quaker school in Pennsylvania. She then goes to the University of South Florida in the 90s and becomes a psychologist, where she worked as the clinical psychologist of the school system in St. Petersburg, Florida. Kind of interesting, you know. And then Michael Paine goes to Northern California and becomes in Yuba County, which is a really shithole county in Northern California. It's really an impoverished county. He becomes a member of the Democratic Party Central Committee. I thought, how appropriate. He's on the central, he's chairman, Michael Paine, in the 2000s. And when Obama is president, becomes chairman of the Yuba County Democratic Central Planning Committee, Eric, right?
Wow.
I know. And then he's on the Library Commission as the chairman of the Yuba County Library Commission. And the point of the matter is, these guys never go away. Michael Paine, I think he died in 2018 or 17, Paine. I'm not sure.
No, so relatively recently. Also.
Right. They always live long lives because they have better health care than me and you. Right?
That's not the truth.
They really do.
And they have no souls, so nothing holding them down.
Ruth Paine's daughter, who in her mid-40s, I think most files still have. There's very few files left. First of all, there's very few left, and what's left in there is about Mexico City, and that's why they let out a couple of them a couple of months ago. Remember, and that was to stick it. They were trying to stick it to Putin. That was a phony release, but they were real docs, you know, about the Russian, you know, being involved in the Kennedy assassination. That was the old chestnut. But in Mexico City are the documents that I was discussing about the CIA and the phony operation that they ran down there, saying Oswald was in Mexico City. And those are embarrassing. The torture of Sylvia Duran, who was the receptionist at the Cuban embassy in Mexico City. The orders to pick her up by the CIA and hold her because she said that guy who came in there was not Oswald, and they couldn't have that. So poor Sylvia Duran, this tiny little cute girl, was taken by Mexican intelligence and tortured for weeks, by the way. Not a pretty picture. And you know, Philip Agee was Philip Agee, the central commit, the planner of this thing down there, was running a film program, you know, obviously filming Oswald, but of course the camera was broken the day he supposedly went to the Soviet embassy and when he went to the Cuban embassy. But I think a lot of those documents, and there's very few documents left, but whatever's left, I believe, are about Mexico City.
Okay, well, you know what? We're wrong, Mark. I just shut it all down. Oswald did it alone. Get over it. David says.
Yeah, that would be, you know what? It's just kind of funny because if you read Posner's book, Case Closed, the guy makes such a schmuck out of himself that it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, later on, he was convicted of plagiarism. Posner is obviously a spook adjacent journalist. There's a bunch of these guys around. They bring out Posner. There's newer guys. Hugh Ainsworth was one of the guys at Dallas Morning News. There's a bunch of these cats, and they're still doing their bidding. There was a guy named Frank Gibney, whose son became a documentary filmmaker, right?
Yeah, back to the trilogy again.
Right.
CIA
Frank
and Hollywood.
Gibney, who was a spook journalist at Newsweek. Thanks, lady. Frank Gibney wrote a letter to Alan Dulles saying, I can't take it anymore. I got to get out of this job, which I have framed in my bedroom, that letter from Frank Gibney, who is, of course, the father of famed documentarian Alex Gibney, who did a documentary hatchet job on Julian Assange, who is still a political prisoner in England with no charges whatsoever. They're just going to keep him there till he dies. Whether we ignore it or not, it's not going to be ignored by history what they did to Julian Assange. So,
Mark, you're not telling me something.
Yeah, I wish. I would take the money at this point and the health benefits. I wish I did have it. You know, they with my nefarious past, I couldn't pass the lie detector test.
And folks, Gibney letter was actually covered in LBJ.
Is that true?
Yeah, well, one of our LBJs, our first or second one about the assassination.
Right. Well, you're gonna find out when we get into Wesley Buell Frazier, the kid who lived, who drove Oswald you're going to find out. He also worked at Texas School Book Depository, and his sister and mother were the next door. And when he takes Oswald to work in his car, the whole curtain rod story becomes a storyline. That's why I mentioned the garage of Ruth Paine, because the curtain rod story is a bullshit story. And Wesley Buell Frazier is lie detected twice. He's brought back by Dallas police. They go to his house. He has a British Enfield rifle at his house. He's got ammunition, and they say, we're going to charge you. And indeed, they do charge him. He's the only other person ever charged with the murder of the president of the United States. That's Wesley Buell Frazier. And they threaten him with the electric chair in Texas unless he cooperates. And he shits his pants and says, I'll say whatever you want. So he tells them that Oswald brought this package into his car. Now, the problem is, a young FBI agent took the statement from Wesley Buell Frazier's mother, who was looking out the window doing the dishes in the morning. And in that document, she says that Lee Harvey Oswald had nothing in his hands. He had no packages. He had a sandwich, and he put that in his coat pocket, his little, 6x6 sandwich. And that, you can read that document. That is available. And in that document, you see the beginning of the frame of the curtain rods and the gun against Lee Harvey Oswald, reluctantly by Wesley Buell Frazier and his sister, Lenny Randall. And not to blame them, Lenny Mae Randall, who and his sister and her brother, Wesley Buell Frazier, are in a tough spot. And they have to do their bidding. Who's still paying to make Oswald did it films? I don't know who's paying that, but I don't know if they're making them. But the point of the matter is, there's so much stuff that is available to the regular person to read. And I've always said, if you want to see the truth of the assassination, read the original interviews by random FBI agents who fan out across Dallas to interview everyone. Because in those documents, like Frazier's mother, you see that she sees that Oswald has nothing in his hands. And then when you get to the Texas School Book Depository on the loading dock in the rear of the building, the foreman who opens up the door again tells the FBI that Oswald comes in to work and he's got nothing in his hands. Now that's troublesome. That's troublesome. So they bury him, but they still exist. And that's just two of a million things. But I mean, if you're really you want to get into the hard facts of the case and disprove anyone who tries to tell you Oswald did it. I mean, there's so many ways to slay that cat. It's just, they did a great job of killing witnesses and intimidating people and, gathering up newsreel footage and stuff.
Yeah, your friend Richard Belzer. Did I get the
Richard Belzer? Yeah.
Belzer.
Yeah.
He wrote a book on just everybody who was killed or died.
Right. Yeah. Belzer got into it. Interestingly enough, Belzer was a big Gilbert fan, by the way. He would show up when Gilbert was performing. And Belzer was at Caroline's a lot back then too. But the Belzer book was quite factually based. I mean, there's a lot of mysterious deaths and everything else. But I mean, when you see the Michael and Ruth Paine, what they did to handle this, you see how complicated the plot could be. You know what I mean? You've got to put Lee Harvey Oswald in that building. You've got to call up truly the foreman of the Texas School Book Depository. You've got to get him that job. I mean, the idea that somebody's getting you a job is kind of interesting because, who gets jobs for people like that? She's saying to Marina at the same time, you can't live with this guy. He's an animal. You got to come live with me. But I'm going to get him a job at the Texas School Book Depository. She then thinks he doesn't even, she says to the Warren Commission, she didn't think he worked there, that he worked at an adjacent warehouse that didn't even exist. So, I mean, her testimony is all over the map. Her testimony is all over the map. And she tries to distance herself. I think on Belzer and others on. I don't know. You're going to have to go to a different show because this is just me and Hunley. It's only, we split the screen in half. We don't have room for other guests.
Occasionally like Barnes or.
Oh yeah, no Barnes, yeah, but not Belzer. Barnes, yes. Belzer, no. I don't even think Belzer's alive anymore, so that would be tough.
I think he is, but I think he's retired.
Is he dead or is he alive?
No, I think he's just retired from acting.
Oh, okay. I know his brother died. I think his brother committed. I knew his brother. I think his brother jumped off the roof or something in Manhattan a couple of years
He's
ago.
still around. He
I
retired
think he
in
moved to France.
2016, 71.
Right, he moved to France, I think. Right.
Don't know.
Oh well, he was big on France.
Could be. Yeah, he moved to south of France.
Yeah, I thought so. I never saw him again. It was weird. He did 1 million episodes of that cop show, right?
Yeah,
He was good on it too. He was very good on it.
Well, he's a unique guy who's played the same character in the most different shows.
Who, Belzer?
Yeah, I forgot the guy's name, but he played him in Homicide. He played him in
Homicide. Yeah, that was the show. Yeah.
Which brings us back to the Wire guy, David Simon.
Oh, David.
That was
Simon.
his show.
Yeah.
But then he was in Law and Order. He's in this. He was in that. He was in cartoon. I mean, it kind of became a meme that Belzer always played the same character, quite literally the same character.
Could the mob alter the parade route? Could the mob alter the autopsy? Could the mob have Oswald sent to Minsk? Could the mob put him at Jagger Childs? You could go on and on and on of things the mob could not have done. I mean, could the mob hire Jack Ruby and rub out Oswald? Absolutely. Could the Campisi brothers visit Jack Ruby the first days in jail in Dallas? Absolutely. Was that a mob hit? Absolutely. But I mean, it's a cutout. I mean, Jack Ruby was given $50,000 to rub out Oswald. He's $50,000, or actually $300,000 in today's money, into the IRS, and his job was to rub out Oswald. That was a mob hit. But that doesn't mean that they planned the assassination. I mean, that's just crazy. It's a complicated situation there, involving military intelligence and Curtis LeMay and Dulles and all these other elements. I mean, the mob did their job in terms of, Jack Ruby was running guns, like we said in the Ruby episode, down to Cuba. What the CIA has attempted to do since day one was to move the needle on the polling, the Gallup polling on public opinion, that the CIA did it. And the leading advocates of the mob did it come out of the CIA journalism, Operation Mockingbird School of Journalism. They're the ones with the mob stories. They're the ones with the mob books. They're the ones doing it all the time from 1963 to 2023. They're the ones trying to lower that percentage of the American people who believe the CIA killed JFK. That's their goal. It's been their goal since day one. They've been successful, but it's still, I want to say, like 60% of the American people in the last poll believe the CIA killed Kennedy. Despite their millions and millions of dollars and books and everything else, the mob story that they keep perpetuating, the average person says what I just said about, the physics of the assassination. And Oliver Stone points it out, of course, in his movie. I'm just quoting from the script itself, what I just did. That's from Oliver's movie. And I recommend Destiny Betrayed, which is now the 4-hour version, which just came out. It's on Amazon Prime. You could find it there and some other places. It's despite the Whoopi Goldberg narration, it's 4 hours of incredible stuff, especially about the autopsy and Curtis LeMay. There's some breaking factoids in that documentary, written by Jim DiEugenio, one of the leading JFK researchers in the world, and it's well worth the 4 hours. And I think you could buy all 4 episodes for $9.99. But possibly
not super expensive.
Right. It's very cheap. It's as a streaming service, but well worth it to keep and show your kids. Anybody who watches that 4 hours is going to have their perceptions changed, not only of the Kennedy assassination, but the deep state that we have now been exposed to for the past 5 or 6 years. Once you see that, one thing with it is the core information has never changed. That's true. There's been additional information. That's what I was saying here. There's additional autopsy information. And the breaking news tidbit was General Bombs Away Curtis LeMay was at the autopsy smoking a cigar, watching his dead nemesis having his head taken apart and a phony brain autopsied by the Bethesda naval crew there. So that shocked me, because one of the guys who was never linked to the conspiracy, who was a Kennedy hater from day one, was Curtis LeMay, General Bombs Away Curtis LeMay, who wanted to invade Cuba and to nuke them.
one more from Chris, and we're going to be wrapping up, Chris. So it's spin out too much here. Is this somebody we're going to be covering, Blakey?
Blakey was a professor, a college professor. I mean, he was just duped. I mean, he wasn't like a real investigator. And I think he went with the mob at the end of the thing. But the reality of it is the House Assassinations Committee came away with the factoid that there was a conspiracy in the killing of JFK. And that is an official government body, probably more relevant, more important than a blue ribbon commission. As RFK Jr. said, there are blue ribbon commissions all through the government, all through the history of the United States. They have no relevance. They're blue ribbon commissions. What has relevance is the House Assassinations Committee, because that was an elected government body of the people, by the people, and for the people. And they did a lot of work on the assassination. Not so much on some of the other assassinations, but on this one they did. And you can look at the Lopez report. If you get your hands on the Lopez report, this kid at the time went down to Mexico City, and he was the one that heard the tapes. He heard the tapes that J. Edgar Hoover refers to LBJ, that this is not Oswald. He sees the photo of the phony Oswald. That's in the Lopez report. That's why the House Assassinations Committee is relevant. And the fact that they declared the assassination of John F. Kennedy, a conspiracy, that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone, or could not have acted alone in the completion of this operation.
Oh, perfect. So, what is next? Who is our next target, so to speak?
Okay, so we're going to do General Walker. And General Walker, even if people think they know General Walker, Edwin Walker out of Texas, you don't know General Walker. This is going to fry your brain, the stuff on General Walker, because it's got relevance to today. He starts in Berlin and ends up in Oxford, Mississippi, and then ends up in Dallas, Texas. There's three major points of geographic contention with Walker, and we will get into it. It is a complicated part of the Kennedy folklore because it goes way back to 1961 in Berlin with nuclear weapons. And that's why it's relevant today. And you'll see when we present this, the relevance of Walker and the plot that Walker develops to kill Kennedy, and the plot that Walker has to attack the Russians and the Soviet Union. I mean, Jesus. Yeah, Walker is very rarely touched upon, except to say that Oswald took a shot at him.
Thanks, David.
David B. But total BS. Yeah. Walker, when you get into the Walker stuff, then you're going to start to see, holy cow, what is going on here? I mean, he's only mentioned because they presume that Oswald took a shot at him, which we'll get into in the Walker episode. Mm-hmm. But the Walker episode starts in 1961 in Berlin, my friends, when he is a John Bircher trying to get people to vote against JFK in 1960 election. So, yeah, I can't wait. I mean, the Walker stuff is great.
All right. Now, that may be Tuesday, it may be Friday. It depends if anything else drops in the interim, but that's our
trying to pull, honey. What are you up to?
I have no idea, but you never know what'll happen. That's why you got to subscribe. Hit the button, hit the bell.
Again, with a subscription with you. You're like a
well, I know, I'm a freaking terrier. What am I going to do?
Right.
What is it? People say criminally unsubscribed. So,
right. Let's say they wake up in the morning one day and they said, maybe Grobert doesn't have enough Kennedy books. How can I help Grobert get Kennedy books? They could PayPal Grobert. This goes directly to, believe me, let me tell you something. I've got more Kennedy books than possibly anybody, but there's so many that I don't have. And some of them are out of print. So I have to throw down some money to get those. And those are like crack cocaine to me. So any PayPal money you want to send me is going directly to the JFK Book Fund, Post Office Box 383, Hollywood, California.
Of course, you could always throw PayPal money at me. And
right.
I may do things like buy some beer or
Hunley puts it back into the economy. I got to give it to Hunley. He gets lamb chops. Hunley, obviously, he's got a smoker in the backyard. I don't know what he's got going there. But you can PayPal me, and you will get chestnuts like I just presented. How long have we been on the air here, Hunley?
hour and 15 minutes.
All right, an hour and 15 minutes. Okay, that's about right. And when we get into Walker, you're going to go, dear God, I'm glad I PayPal'd Grobert to find out this stuff about General Walker. But also there's merchandise, Hunley, no?
There is. Look
Okay.
down below, all kinds of merchandise. There are now polos, but then also we're getting to summer. So there are tank tops and like running shirts, the ones you sweat in when you run, versus a straight t-shirt. Obviously, we still have the t-shirts. We have some long sleeves. We have cups. There's a really cool glass jar one that I really want to get.
Now, what about the lingerie? I had a female subscriber ask me about the America's Untold Story lingerie.
I haven't got to that yet.
Oh, okay.
You're still Mark is still having people model it for him and checking it in real time.
In Vegas, they really love America's Untold Stories in Vegas. I mean, I left some of the stories there because it was Vegas, but nevertheless, I think that our line of lingerie could do very well, Hunley.
Mm-hmm. I think it could. I think it could.
Now, what are you saying? Subscribe to this thing? Buy
and locals. Locals,
locals.
Like those letters. We'll try to get a couple letters and put those up on
the
locals.
love letters. Love letters. Yes, I will put those love letters up.
Yeah, and that's always a good place. I always announce the show on the day on locals, pretty much before anywhere else.
A lot of, I just want to say something. A lot of people don't know what locals is, or you've seen a lot of commenters going, "How do I get to locals? What do you take the 101 to the 5?" I mean, how do they get there?
Unstructured.locals.com. Again, in the description. It's
okay.
And you can follow for free. So you can go there, follow and say, does this look like something I want to support or not? And, read it. There's a lot of people who post there. That's all free. I do a show every week with Nate, the lawyer.
Nate the Skate, Archibald.
Nah.
Look it up. Nate the Skate.
Okay.
Look it up.
Every Sunday morning. That's a locals exclusive. So there's stuff there. And you can follow me there and watch that for free. So
now, are we going to go on with Viva and Barnes at some point, or what's the deal?
I don't know. You hung out with Barnes in Vegas. Did you get that? I know,
but he
out?
referred me back to Viva. He says, and then you got to talk to Viva. There's 4 of us who want to get together. I mean, Viva's obviously busy, but the people want this, Eric. The people know what they want. They want a Texas cage match.
You know what? Who knows? There may be a possibility they'll just come on here and we'll do a 4-pack on it.
Then I don't have to leave my house. That's even better. They come on here.
So there you go. Yeah, and everybody can check it out. And if you like these stories, we'll get Mark and Barnes and Dave and I.
Barnes knows all this crap. Let me tell you something. Barnes knows this as well as I do. But the reality of it is, I would watch the Duran. I am addicted to this show now because they got the best war coverage going. Absolutely spectacular. And also this Gonzalo Lira is great. And also anything you can find with Scott Ritter. Despite the background of Scott Ritter, he still knows war and weaponry and is an expert in that area. Why does UConn decide how much I can give? Great. I don't know.
Oh, I guess
you know what?
They're messing with the super chat.
I'm back to the nth degree. Don't listen to them.
No, I agree. And definitely come on locals.
They were saying that the YouTube wasn't putting through super chats. This was on the Duran with
we've had that here too.
Really?
That they're not.
And maybe just anytime they see the word Grobert, they don't put it through. It might come to that.
Well, I don't think that you're affecting the Duran, or have you been a guest?
No. But I'm saying if you have the P word in there or the letter Z now, right?
You know what? I've got a note. I always gripe, but this one has not turned yellow yet.
Boy, oh boy, don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
I know it'll happen any moment. So
right. Don't jinx it.
Just surprising.
We made it this far. That's shocking. Well, maybe we didn't talk about anything controversial.
Could be. And I look forward to David B. And
David B's back again, this guy.
Yeah, nice comment thread. So we'll look for you in the comments. Anyway.
Dude, he's probably an expert on the assassination. I mean, some of the best books to read are Destiny Betrayed by Jim DiEugenio regarding the Kennedy assassination, and Devil's Chessboard about Alan Dulles, which came out about 8 years ago. Fantastic.
We're going to be doing Dulles at some point, aren't we?
I guess it's kind of been done to death. I mean, I don't think there's anything missing from the Dulles narrative, but I mean, we could get into it. But I mean,
we're not in a rush. We're not in a rush.
I'm not in a rush to do Dulles. There's enough stuff. Ruth Paine and these others, and de Mohrenschildt and Wesley Buell Frazier, far more fascinating to me. These minor figures who fit into the chessboard of the JFK assassination. You pull anyone out of there, and the house of cards collapses. You know, if you pull any one of these guys out of there, Wesley Buell Frazier went down in the basement of the Texas School Book Depository to have his lunch for reasons that nobody explained, and then turned off the power when the shots were fired. For over a minute, there was no power in the Texas School Book Depository. That's because of Wesley Buell Frazier, my friend.
Another
Hey, Code Monkey, way to go. Yeah, I got Spectrum hooked up. I watched the Dodgers last night. I'm back. I'm sucked in again like a crackhead. Jesus Christ, I don't have time to watch these games.
Okay, well, on that note, everybody happy. Well, I don't know if it's happy, but spend a quality Easter with your
Easter,
family.
right?
Yeah.
It's Easter. It's also Passover tonight. Good Pesach.
Yes.
Manish Tano, Halaylo Hazem, Yikol Halaylos. Remember that. Why is this night different from all other nights?
What he said.
I'll leave you with that Hebrew.
And we'll see you next time.